So at the recent November debate, I thought Bernie Sanders had the best closing remarks. Now, it's no surprise I thought that. I thought that in every single debate so far. But his closing remarks in this debate, I think he made them a little more personal. And by doing that, I think he showed a side of himself that a lot of people don't normally get to see if they aren't paying attention to Bernie at his rallies on a normal basis. So I want to show you his closing remarks, and I'm also going to bring in another clip from the debate that also goes to the fact that Bernie is more human than anybody else on stage. But first, let me show you this his closing remarks.
Thank you. Let me say a word about myself. Unusual as it may seem. I am the son of an immigrant, young man of 17, who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. I have some sense of the immigrant experience. I will stand with the 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. At the age of 21, as a member of a civil rights group at the University of Chicago, I was arrested, spent the night in jail, and I have been committed to the fight against all forms of discrimination, racial discrimination, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, and religious bigotry. I will lead an administration that will look like America, will end the divisiveness brought by Trump and bring us together. During this campaign, I am proud to say that I have received more campaign contributions than any candidate at this point in an election in American history. Over 4 million contributions, averaging $18 apiece. If you want to be part of a movement that is not only going to beat Trump, but transform America, that doesn't have a super PAC, doesn't do fundraisers at wealthy people's homes, please join us at BernieSanders.com. Thank you.
That was great. So I thought Bernie did there what he's needed to do for a while. He's needed to discuss his grassroots support. He's needed to bring up the fact that he has the most donations out of anybody in the race. That this is somebody who is building a movement. That's why this candidate is separate from everybody else in the race. He's not just about winning the presidency for himself. This is about actually transforming America for the people. You do that with the grassroots movement. Like any big change in history, you look back, it takes a movement of people to get things done. So you have him bringing that up in his closing remarks, in addition to the fact, bringing up, who he is as a person, his history of fighting discrimination, getting arrested, being the son of an immigrant. I mean, he has this life experience that he rarely touches on. I'm glad he brought it up here. And then he folds that also into the fact that he's grown this grassroots movement. And on top of it all, he just comes off being a human. I mean, it kind of starts off with a joke. Like he starts off by saying, let me say a bit about myself, unusual as it may seem. Like he's just naturally funny. Like he doesn't have, and another example of that was also during this debate, right here. So Bernie Sanders cracked this joke just randomly during this debate. So unlike a lot of politicians that crack jokes where they're written down, they're planned, they practice them, Bernie's just a naturally funny dude. So watch what he says here when Joe Biden's talking.
He has given North Korea everything they wanted, creating the legitimacy by having a meeting with Kim Jong-un, who's a thug, although he points out that I'm a rabid dog, need to be beaten with a stick. But recently was his comment.
Other than that, you like him.
Other than that, I like him. And uniting Japan and Australia and...
So it's just like, I'm sorry that was kind of low. I'll change the audio in post. But this is just who Bernie is. He's just a dude. Like, he's just a normal guy. And he's a normal guy that cares about people, that happens to get into politics when he was younger and is a lifelong independent, has always fought against the establishment, be it corporate establishment, the Democratic Party establishment, the Republican Party establishment, the media establishment. He's always been a guy fighting for the people against the powerful. That's who Bernie Sanders is. As Cardi B has said, he's a natural humanitarian. I mean, it's just so obvious. In fact, let me end here before I get to all the super chats. The last segment here, the Bernie Sanders campaign put out this video of him. So this is kind of Bernie's history throughout the years. It's about 3 minutes long. It's fantastic. I want to share this with you if you haven't seen it already. And even if you have seen it, it's worth watching again. There's a lot to take in here. So let me play this.
Bernie's election to Congress transformed the political landscape of Vermont.
People think about Vermont as a very blue state, but at the time Bernie was first running, that seat had been held by Republicans for decades.
He became the major opposition to the Republican candidate, and he ultimately won that race.
His message to the people is always the same, is that the rural communities are the heart and soul of America. He may be originally from New York, but he certainly understands the ground that I stand on.
An independent who has shown growing power in recent years.
Bernie's work in the 90s earned him the term Amendment King.
We passed amendment after amendment after amendment.
He was so effective at bringing together coalitions to support the needs of all Vermonters.
During a 10-year period of Republican control in the U.S. House, he passed more amendments by recorded vote than any other member.
And he was able to get support for things like community health centers.
Bernie has, of course, always tried to get a universal health care system. He's done the next best thing.
One of his amendments got $100 million for community health centers. He talks to them about the real economic issues facing them.
Bernie's always been aware of the value of the family farm, and he's always stood up for good food and the people that produce it. The Dairy Compact was one of the biggest ones, but that was one of the issues that gave fair prices to farmers that we could survive on.
Which really solidified an economic basic quality of life for our dairy farmers.
A number of companies like IBM in Vermont were trying to create what's called a cash balance pension system, which harms older and older workers.
That were being discriminated against based on their age. We need to save their pensions. And so we launched a big fight. Restored $320 million in pension benefits to 130,000 workers. It took a movement of IBM workers to demand that IBM stop cutting their pension benefits.
Bernie was always right dead on the money, and as compassionate as any person I've ever run into.
People had faith in Bernie.
If they know that Bernie Sanders fights for them, that he's fighting for their family, that their lives can be better if the policies that Bernie is advocating are put into place.
And Bernie is a person that I feel will bring the whole country together.
Bernie stood up for our children, health care, our environment, and Bernie reaches people across the political spectrum, and that's how he wins.
So there you go. He has a history of fighting for people. I know, we all know that already, but it's hard to really communicate that in a 30-second answer in a debate. Like, you need videos like this to really showcase that. Like, you share this video with friends and family that maybe aren't engaged in politics or maybe support somebody else. Show them that. I mean, nobody has this record. It's just a matter of communicating this to people. And at the same time, showing people polling that shows him defeating Trump, shows him being the only one to defeat Trump in Iowa, in Michigan by the highest numbers, nationally in that recent Emerson poll I showed you earlier. I mean, you combine that with who Bernie is, who he's fought for, that's it. That's how you get his support. That's how that's how you grow his support. So there is, like, I have a hard time understanding why people wouldn't support Bernie Sanders just because of who he is. But I think a lot of it is because people are into this a mental frame thinking, well, he can't defeat Trump. How can a socialist defeat Donald Trump? They're going to call you socialist anyways. They've called Democrats socialist for years. Like, it doesn't matter what labels do. It matters who the person is. It matters what the person says. I mean, a great example of that is when Bernie went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and you read the comments on that podcast, insanely positive. Tons of people saying, I had no idea Bernie was this kind of person, because they've been fed this narrative that Bernie's some crazy old man with this crazy old socialist, whatever. But when they actually see the man and see him discuss what he cares about, what he's fighting for, why he's fighting for it, it becomes obvious this is a real human who actually cares for people. And he's real. He's not pretending to support things he doesn't support. He's a real guy. So when you combine that, as I said, with the polling, showing him destroying Trump, then you have a winning message.